House will come to order. This morning, the pledge will be said by Aidan McKean, Rogan Williams, Sarah Arnold from Thompson Valley High School in Loveland, Colorado, guests of Representative Hugh McKean.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we're going to go this way if you guys want a picture. Mr. Randall, please call the roll. Okay.
Representative Arndt excused. Baisley. Beckman. Benavides. Byrd. Bockenfeld. Buck. Buckner. Winseo. Caraveo. Carver. Catlin. Representative Catlin.
Excused. Marilyn.
Coleman. Cutter. Duran. Escar. Exum. Froelich. Galindo. Garnett. Geithner. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Gray. Hanson. Herod. Putin. Humphrey. Jackson. Marquez Lewis. Kennedy. Representative Catlin is present. Kennedy.
Excused.
Kip. Kraftharp. Landgraf. Larson. Lewis, excused. Liston. Montine. McCluskey. McKean. McLaughlin. Oh. Melton. There he is. Michelson Janae. Mullica. Neville. Pelton. Ransom. Rich. Roberts. Sane. Sandridge. Singer. Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Sullivan. Tipper. Titone. Valdez A. Valdez D.
Good morning, Colorado!
Van Winkle. Weisman. Williams. Wilson. Madam Speaker.
Here. With 60 present for excused and 1 vacant, we have a quorum. Is there anyone? Representative Duran.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the reading of the Journal of Wednesday, February 13th, 2019 be dispensed with and approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye!
Yes. All those opposed say no.
No!
The motion passes. Representative McKean.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you, Representative, and to have your son in the gallery, or in the House.
Thank you very much. And since you mentioned him, I'm assuming that I will not incur a fine.
He's family, it's okay.
Oh, that's right, he's family member. So, folks, you got to hear my son this morning deliver the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like you to welcome my son Aiden, and you guys can stand. My son Aiden, his friend Rogan, and his friend Sarah. You know, we don't make these introductions that long, but these are three of the best friends that you will ever get to see together. They do everything together. They support each other. If your children are so lucky in life to have friends like these guys, then you have some really damn lucky kids.
That's very sweet. Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and happy Valentine's Day to my lovely wife. Also, I want to introduce to you Adams State University, Dr. Cheryl Love with us here sitting down with us, also the trustees. We have the student trustees, and also up in the gallery, we have individuals from Adams State University, which is a 83.5 million total economic impact to the San Luis Valley, 13.5 million operation spending, 36.8 million in student living and personal expenses, 5 million employee impact on San Luis Valley health care, 21.4 million employee payroll and direct spending. Not only that, did you guys know who founded Adams State University? It was our 25th governor of Colorado, Billy Adams. So thank you. Let's give him a warm welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for joining us today. Representative McKean and Kipp. I told him he could go. And Buck.
I'm just the third wheel.
He's got family here.
Good morning, everybody. We would like to welcome some of our combined constituents this morning. We have folks here from Fort Collins Leadership. Where are you folks? There they are. Hello,
And we have folks from Leadership Loveland.
Woo! Thank you for being here this morning, and happy Valentine's Day. And my aide is looking for one of you, if you wouldn't mind
But it's student purpose.
helping out with that.
Student
And I just want to say thank you so much for the people that do live in the unincorporated parts of Larimer County and Windsor, if there are by chance. But I want to recognize Ann Hutchison, who does a remarkable job for Northern Colorado Leadership. Woo! You rock. I'll pay that.
Representative Buck, I'm going to let that pass this time because I've been inconsistent recently, but just next time.
Letting things fly.
Representative Herod.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I, too, want to acknowledge the Adams State folks who I think just left, but my brother is a graduate from Adams State College, or he went to Adams State College and started his football career there. So thank you to Adams State. But I want to welcome Lorez Meinhold to the chamber. She is our interim director for Caring for Denver, which is now the largest mental health foundation in the state of Colorado. Thanks for being here, Lorez.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is just a reminder for judiciary members. We have 3 bills up today at 1:30 in room 112, 1172, 1045, and 1149. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, Representative Herod.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you. You look great in your white.
You as well.
Thank you. Members of Finance Committee, just an announcement, we will not be meeting today.
Representative Jaquez Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is an honor to serve with you.
Thank you. Honor to serve with you.
And we missed you yesterday.
I can't remember what. Oh, yes. I was at the dentist. Yeah.
And along those lines, may I request that next Friday, the 22nd, I will not be able to see everyone's smiling faces, if that is all right with you, Madam Speaker.
And did you get permission from the majority leader?
I did, Madam Speaker.
Then permission to be excused is granted.
Thank you.
Representative Longtine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A pleasure to serve with you.
It's a pleasure to serve with you, Rep. Lundin.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce that today is the Public Health Day at the Capitol, and we have some guests over here from the CU School of Public Health. If you'd like to stand up so we could recognize you. Thank you for being here to remind us that public health is important. And welcome.
Thank you for being here today. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Announcement for the members of State Veterans and Military Affairs. We'll be meeting today at 1:30 in LSBA to hear House Bill 1151 and House Bill 1167.
Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, today is the Colorado Municipal League's legislative workshop that will be going on today. I know we'll be doing a lot of work while that's going on, but today at 4 p.m. at the CML offices, which are actually just down the road from here. You'll receive an email about it. They're having their legislative reception from 4 to 6 p.m. They'd love to see you there and talk to you about issues facing Colorado cities and towns. Thanks.
Any other announcements or introductions? Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While everyone is gathering, I just want to give everyone an update on the calendar and the schedule. As you can see, the second reading calendar is very, very long today. And so we are going to go all the way up until 1:30, and then we're going to break for afternoon committees. Hopefully we don't come back tonight, but that's always an option if we don't get through enough work today. So just a heads up on that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
What? Get over here.
Okay, I'm up here. Thank you. Meg. Meg. You got to use it.
Any other announcement? Representative Buenteo. And Representative Buenteo and Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you, ma'am.
It is an honor to serve with you, Representative.
And it is a huge honor to be part of the largest, and in fact, I believe the first, majority female state house in the United States.
We are wearing white today to celebrate the anniversary of women's suffrage and to celebrate our all-female chamber and our second highest female delegation in the country.
Today is the 99th anniversary of women's suffrage. We are all wearing white today, as our grandmothers did before us 99 years ago when the suffragette movement became a thing. So, thank you so much to all the ladies that I serve with today in the chamber. It is an honor and a privilege.
Thank you, representatives. Way to go. Way to go.
Good job.
Colorado House of Representatives. All right, Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Education Committee. We are hearing 4 bills today. 1017 with remote testimony, 1139, 1123, and Senate Bill 9. We look forward to seeing you there at 1:30. Thank you.
I have one announcement. Representative Catlin will replace Representative Ransom on House Education today only. Are there any other announcements or introductions? Then I believe the next order of business is General Order, second reading of bills. Representative Gray. You have heard the motion. If there's no objection, Representative Gray will take the chair.
With your unanimous consent, bills will be read by title unless there's a request for reading a bill at length. Committee amendments will not be read unless requested, as they are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads and not read unless requested. Bills will be laid over, of course, upon the motion of the majority leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 115.
Senate Bill 115 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to do the Judicial Department.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 115.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 115 is not that one. Senate Bill 115 is the supplemental for the Judicial Department. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 115? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 115. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 115 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 116.
Senate Bill 116 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Law.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 116.
To the bill.
This is the supplemental for the Department of Law. I ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 116? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 116. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 116 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 117.
Senate Bill 117 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Local Affairs.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 117 for the Department of Local Affairs and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 117? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of, Senate Bill 117. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 117 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 118.
Senate Bill 118 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 118 for the supplemental for the Department of Military Affairs and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 118? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 118. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 118 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 119.
Senate Bill 119 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Personnel.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 119, the supplemental to the Department of Personnel, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 119? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 119. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 119 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 120.
Senate Bill 120 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Public Health and Environment.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 120, the supplemental for the Department of Public Health and Environment, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 120? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 120. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 120 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 124.
Senate Bill 124 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of State.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 124, the supplemental for the Department of State, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 124? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 124. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 124 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 113.
Senate Bill 113 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Health Care and Policy and Financing.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 113, the supplemental for the Department of Health Care Policy and Finance, and ask for an aye vote.
Would you like to move the Appropriations Committee report in addition to that?
I would love to move the Appropriations Committee report.
All right. Representative Escar.
In the Appropriations Committee, we had an amendment that made some technical fixes and approved that unanimously. I ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Colonel Sanders. I'm sorry, Representative Hansen. Representative Hansen. No.
We're good.
We're good. Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report to Senate Bill 113? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The Appropriation Committee report is adopted. To the bill Representative Hansen.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I don't think there's anything funny about a woman's right to vote. Sorry, that was too easy. And I like Kentucky Fried Chicken. So let's leave Colonel Sanders out of this. I move Amendment J003 to Senate Bill 113.
Amendment J003 has been moved. If we all are lucky, it will soon be displayed. Amendment J003 has been properly moved and displayed. Representative Hansen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Members, this is a small technical amendment to Senate Bill 113. This allows us to do a little bit more good work this year. New information came forward about a situation that was happening at Denver Health around long-term care spots. They have a number of patients that are ready to be discharged but do not have a long-term care spot available. This amendment would allow an additional $200,000 in cash spending authority, cash that would be provided by Denver Health, matched by a federal grant, and open up $400,000 in additional long-term care spots between now and June 30th. And I would ask for your support. This is a supplemental because of new information that came forward, the high demand for these long-term care spots, and we think it's appropriate to match this need by expanding this cash spending authority. This has been looked at closely by all the JBC members, and we're in agreement that we should bring forward J003. I ask for your support.
Any further discussion, Representative Ransom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge an aye vote on the amendment.
Any further discussion on J003? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment J003 to Senate Bill 113. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. J003 is adopted. Any further discussion on Senate Bill 113 as recently amended? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 113. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 113 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 125.
Senate Bill 125 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Transportation.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 125, the supplemental for the Department of Transportation, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 125? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 125. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 125 is reluctantly adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 114.
Senate Bill 114 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Human Services.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 114, the supplemental for the Department of Human Services, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 114? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 114. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 114 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 121.
Senate Bill 121 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Public Safety.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 121, the supplemental for the Department of Safety, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 121? Representative Benavidez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the members of the Joint Budget Committee in bringing this forward and all of their work with regard to all of these supplementals. You know, we had thought about bringing an amendment to this. We're not, but there was a significant concern that I had and others with regard to a roughly $400,000 supplemental with regard to black market marijuana interdiction. The intent is this is not a true up, I'm told. This is actually a request to spend this $400,000 to lease some vehicles, to buy 3 incinerators for large marijuana grows that they have seized, and then it's also an associated $15,000 a year lease payments that would be continuing in their budget. While I'm not sure why that wasn't done as a regular request in their budget and why it can't wait till June, that has to wait till now to buy that because it has not been bought. On the other hand, this is marijuana funds. And our marijuana funds should be directed to that. But the marijuana black market interdiction is a huge matter that we discussed at length 2 years ago with regard to 1220 and 1221. So having them come forward and do this the regular way seems to make sense. But again, since it is directly tied to the marijuana cash funds, I just wanted to flag it for down the road for long bill for people, but I will be supporting the supplemental.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 121? Representative Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I concur with my colleagues' statements. Members, we've been discussing this for a number of years. There's no reason that the department should not have anticipated some of these costs, and given that they haven't spent the money yet and they're actually just planning, I don't understand why they can't plan for this in the next long bill budget as opposed to doing this through a supplemental process. While I will support this supplemental, I do issue a word of caution to the department and to the members of this chamber for future budgets that we don't allow the supplemental process to become a way of avoiding a floor fight or avoiding the long bill in terms of getting significant funds addressed to your department. So let's make sure that we're not making this a practice of habit, but I will support this supplemental.
Any additional words of caution or otherwise? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 121. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 121 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 122.
Senate Bill 122 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 122, the supplemental for the Department of Regulatory Agencies, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 122? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 122. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Senate Bill 122 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 123.
Senate Bill 123 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Revenue.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 123, the supplemental for the Department of Revenue, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 123? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 123. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 123 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 111.
Senate Bill 111 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Corrections.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 111, the supplemental for the Department of Corrections, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 111? Representative Benavidez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And is it appropriate to do the amendment now?
Yes.
Okay. We have an amendment to this bill, and it's Amendment J001, and we ask that it be displayed.
Do you move J001?
I move J001 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment J001 has been moved and is properly displayed. Representative Benavidez.
Thank you. Members, in this supplemental, there are two expenditures that Corrections has made and is asking us to approve. One of those expenditures is roughly $2.2 million for overtime. And, you know, I understand that in Corrections, they are having some problems with staffing, and there have been some instances in some of the institutions. So I think that the overtime request is fully justified. But what this amendment does, it takes the second expenditure, which is $1,134,000, which was done to make changes to CSP2. And for those of you that don't know what CSP2 is, it is the penitentiary that we built in the mid-2000s, and it was built as a solitary confinement or administrative segregation prison, because if you recall, at that time we had many people that were in solitary confinement for years, and there was prior legislators felt there was a need. But after the terrible, tragic circumstance where the director of corrections was assassinated, and the person that assassinated him went from administrative segregation to release, that this was not a way to handle prisoners. So there have been significant changes made in corrections, and actually the way corrections is done, it is looked at as a model around the country right now to reduce the number of people in solitary confinement. As a result, this facility could not be used. And the reason it could not be used as a prison, because for solitary confinement, they are in their cell almost all the time. So there's no need for recreational yards, there's no need for special congregation rooms for inmates, for any of that. They're just very, very thick cells that they're in. So as a result, it cannot be used. And back in 2012, our predecessors passed a law that basically said that we cannot house inmates in that prison. And that law is 17, I have it. Representative Weissman, thank you. And in that, we said, do not house inmates in there. We said that corrections could do necessary maintenance, but they should try to sell this building. That's been on the books since 2013. Since then, there was a prison utilization study done in 2013. There was another one done in 2016 as to what do we do with this building that we can't use as a prison. So as a result, at different times when our population in prisons has fluctuated, Corrections has come forward and asked for supplementals to get that prison ready to house inmates, which can't be done as long as this statute exists. I know since I've been here for the last 2 years, I brought an amendment to the Long Bill, my first year here, to implement one of the utilization studies and to open up that prison. Last year, I joined on a bipartisan bill to do the same thing. And both times, they were killed in this body. So clearly, we do not have an agreement as to whether this prison should open or not. But what this supplemental does, because it's my understanding after talking to analysts in the Joint Budget Committee that there have been 2 or 3 other ones. One was approved 2 years ago, but they never did it, so that money went away. And then the others were denied. And the reason they were denied is because they said, we want to get this ready to house inmates. And the analyst said, no, because of this statute. This statute has to change first. This year, they changed their tune. And they told JBC that we have to sell this, and we can't sell it if it doesn't have recreational yards. Now, it is true to house regular prisoners, not administrative segregation prisoners. You need recreation yards. But it seems really strange that after 6 years, now it's an emergency to get these ready to sell when they have made no attempts in the last 6 years to sell it. So clearly, this is going against what this body has determined. We have not made a decision whether we should ever house inmates in this prison. It's going to be an important subject that we will take up this year, but we have not taken it up yet. So this is the proverbial cart before the horse, because in the discussion in JBC, there was also discussion and the analysts gave a memo to JBC members saying, we're just doing this. We're just preparing the building. We aren't housing inmates, so we're not violating the statute. True, but again, by doing that, it mitigates any discussion that we have in favor of opening up the prison, when we have clearly said we don't want to do that. So we need to have the discussion. And I think this really goes to our authority as the third branch of government. You know, either we make laws and we stand behind them and we expect departments to do that as well, or we don't. You know, if we don't approve this, you will hear the money's already been spent, we need to approve it. No, we don't. That's what this process is about. It's to say we don't approve it. You overspent, so you save money somewhere else, and you pay for this. And that's what I'm asking you to do today, to say, we need to discuss this, we need to make this decision before you start spending money that's in direct conflict as what this body has determined. So members, I urge a yes vote on the amendment.
Representative Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I also urge a yes vote on this amendment. In the 7 years I've been down here, I've watched the supplemental for Department of Corrections do some very wonky and crazy things, and we've seen their budget continue to increase. I was pleased this time when I saw the supplemental because we didn't see an increase in our private prison population. We didn't see a request for more private prison beds, but unfortunately, they still disappointed me in the end because they tried to do an end run, around the legislature when it comes to CSP2. Members, we've had this conversation. We've discussed this in judiciary. We've discussed this through the task force. We've discussed this through capital development. And each time they were told no. Each and every single time. And yet they come to the JBC and say that this is an emergency and that they have to build these yards. They say for one reason, it's because the prison population is increasing, they're gonna have to use sleigh beds. Well, members, we had a lengthy discussion on that last year when they had their supplemental process, and we ended up creating a task force to try to tackle the prison population issue. That is not the issue. Then they come and they say, well, it's because we want to sell CSP2. And we have to go ahead and pay for this up front. No, we don't. Not at all. Instead, they want to try to legislate through supplementals. They want to take away your ability to govern. The 65 members in this chamber, they want to do an end run around this chamber to get their way. That's not right. Absolutely not right. And to have gone and spent the money already, that's not what we should be doing. This was not an emergency. So members, let's not pass the supplemental as written. Let's amend this out. They've got $809 million in their budget. I'm sure they can figure out where to find $1 million to pay for the money that they've already spent. In fact, from what I understand, they're already looking at that because they knew that this was a risk. They knew that they rolled the dice on this. We have worked with corrections faithfully for years. We have been up front with this department for years. And to see this type of game played once again, it's disingenuous, it's problematic, and again, we don't need to set a tradition or a standard that says that if you don't get your way with the 65, you go to the 6 across the street. That's not the way we govern in Colorado. That's not the way that we allow any other department to govern in this state. So members, please, I ask for an aye vote on this because of the principle.
Sorry. Representative Harrod.
I didn't hear what he said.
Members, you guys have seen me down here before on the Department of Corrections supplemental. For those of you all who are new, welcome. This has been an ongoing conversation. I am proud to say that I chaired the Prison Capacity Working Group last year, subcommittee, because we keep getting supplementals for the Department of Corrections year after year after year that go against the will of the General Assembly. So for those of you all who are new to this issue, let me tell you what happened. Last year, the Department of Corrections had a supplemental request that we held up. Democrats and Republicans together said we were sick of the ballooning DOC budget and that we must have accountability from the departments before we continue to approve things like supplementals and budget requests. We then had a bill brought before the General Assembly and the Judiciary Committee to reopen CSP2. Democrats and Republicans voted that bill down. We said no. Then they thought we were sleeping over the summer, had a JBC meeting without our new members, who I'm sure will come down and talk about the process soon, and I welcome that. But I was there, along with members of both sides of the aisle, and they asked to open the yards of CSP2. Not only did they ask for this amount of money, they said it was a plan to open CSP2. Now, CSP2 is a facility that was built for solitary confinement. So it was not fit for housing correctional inmates today. They have to reconfigure the entire institution. They needed yards to open it. We already voted no. They come back and say we're going to do it anyways. And then they did it. And now they come back to us and say, well, we spent the money. Can we have it, please? No, you can't. It's not how we do business here. If we didn't have a bill, then maybe they could go forward with this. But we did have a bill, and it was denied. But let me tell you, members, this wasn't the first time. I have binders of times when they came to the General Assembly and asked for money to reopen CSP2. In supplemental processes, with bills to the General Assembly on judiciary, and we said no. We said, Department of Corrections, here's a bill, 1410, that allows you to release valves, to release inmates into community corrections. Get these people off parole. We have 400 open community correction beds today that we are not using. They didn't do it. So now they say we're at crisis. They created the crisis so that we would have to fund them to reopen this prison. This is the first step. It is required in statute for the General Assembly to approve the reopening of a prison. Have you guys seen that bill? Have we seen that bill? We have not. We have given them the tools that they need to address these issues so that slave beds do not have to be a reality for Colorado. I say use those valves. Once you've used those valves, then come back and say you need to open CSP2 and bring it through the proper channels, bring it to the Judiciary Committee, and we will hear that bill. This is not the right process. This is not the right movement here. And then they say, well, we need this to reopen so that we can sell the prison. Let me talk about that. CSP2 is located on a campus of prisons. Any developers in here in the room want to buy that property? You have to drive through multiple prisons to access the prison. Well, what are you going to build? We're not selling. What are you going to build there? The Capital Development Committee put the Department of Corrections request at the bottom of their list because they are not going through with the will of the General Assembly. They are going around the processes. They're asking aunt instead of asking mom and dad. And we should have the ability to say what happens with the department, and they should have to follow our will. They're just trying to wait us out. But members, I'm not going anywhere. So, I thank Representative Benavidez and Melton for bringing this amendment forward. I ask for bipartisan support and a clear message to the Department of Corrections that this is not okay and that we will not fund the supplemental. And what will happen? They will have to find the money within their own department themselves. I ask for an aye vote on this amendment. I also ask for an aye vote for the increase of funding for the workers because it's not their fault. We should not be penalizing the workers within the Department of Corrections. This is the right movement forward. I appreciate them bringing this forward. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or Mr. Chair. Pardon.
I'll take it.
Okay. Just thought I'd check. Members, I ask for a no vote on the amendment. Although I agree wholeheartedly with the philosophies and the ideas that have been spoken down here at the well, I believe the Department of Corrections needs to do a better job of going through the proper channels to make sure that everything is cleared by this General Assembly and the direction that we've been moving in the 5 years I've been here around reform. I agree wholeheartedly with everything my good colleague just talked about. I just want to make sure that we understand this supplemental. They had permission in September from that joint budget committee then for this emergency supplemental to work on these yards, spent $1 million and some change on these yards. So they've spent the money. They're simply asking, because we did that and we had approval, we need this supplemental to true up our budget. And some people have asked, well, what's going to happen if they don't, if this amendment gets on? And I'm just going to read you the list of maintenance projects that will not be completed this year if this amendment goes on. Central plant boiler, entry gate controller, pedestrian gate, exterior door replacement, central heating plant cooling tower media replacement, proximity card system replacement, infirmatory elevator modernization, living unit HVAC unit, automatic transfer switch generator switch upgrades, vehicle gate operators, facility fire alarm repair, programs area HVAC units, living units, HVAC units, exterior door replacement, and wastewater treatment facility improvements. All of those projects would total about $1 million as well. So those maintenance projects, if they don't get the funding in the supplemental, will be put on hold for another year, which could then again even deteriorate more, and in the end we will end up as a state paying more for this maintenance. So philosophically, I wholeheartedly agree. I am not excited about this, but I will ask for a no vote on the amendment and a yes on the bill.
Representative Benavides.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I just want to speak to a couple of things. One thing I forgot, and I think Representative Herod handled it a bit, is that last year when we put together a task force, it was based on an executive order, it was a bipartisan task force, they opposed reopening CSP. But recognizing we do have some increases in prison population, we set in some very specific things that corrections could do. One of those came from the JBC, was to set targets to get people out into community corrections, out on parole, out into intensive supervision. They have not met those targets, even though they could do that, because we have so many people that are still in prison that are beyond their parole eligibility date. It costs roughly $38,000 a year to keep somebody in prison, as compared to letting them out in community corrections or intensive supervision, where it's roughly $8,000 to $9,000. They have not met those targets. We also passed a bill last year, House Bill 1410, that also gave them a safety valve that said if you were in 99% of capacity, you could do certain things to get people out. At our SMART Act hearing this year, we asked them about that. That has never been utilized by them. So, and they have not met the target. So they are not using the tools that we gave them. And yes, unfortunately, when a department overspends, I mean, our authority is appropriations. You know, every department can come and say, oh, we really needed this and we can get this done. But once the appropriation is ultimately denied, which is what we are attempting to do here with this amendment, then yes, they have to find it in their budget. But this wouldn't, you know, there have been several years that Department of Corrections actually has given back money from maintenance projects. They have not done those. So yes, they can find it there, they can find it other places, but they cannot thumb their nose at us and say our decisions don't matter. And that's what this supplemental does with respect to this $1.1 million. So again, members, I urge you to support the amendment, and if it's amended, the supplemental. Thank you.
Any further discussion on J001? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment J001 to Senate Bill 111. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment J001 is adopted. To the bill, Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 111 as amended.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 111? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 111. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 111 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 112.
Senate Bill 112 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the offices of the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and State Planning and Budgeting.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 112, the supplemental appropriation for the office of the Governor, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Representative Van Winkle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have some questions about this one because, as far as I understand, a JBC supplemental should either be an act of God, new information comes to light, a technical error was made, or there's an unforeseen contingency, as in caseloads increase things or decrease, things like that. But my reading of this, for the very first time that we're talking and putting into statute the Office of Saving People Money on Healthcare, we're actually increasing the budget and taking money from, I believe, the general fund to pay the Lieutenant Governor somewhat of a bonus of $67,500 to increase costs. So I'm wondering how this fits. I guess two questions. One, how does this fit as a supplemental when it's the very first time this new office is coming to light? And number two, how are we saving people money by, well, I'll leave that one for a different bill for a different day.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 112? Seeing none, Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess we won't be getting answers to my questions about how this fits as a supplemental, which is extremely disappointing. And because we cannot get answers to the questions, I urge this entire body to vote no.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 112? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 112. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Senate Bill 112 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 126.
Senate Bill 126 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of the Treasury.
Representative Escar. Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 126, a supplemental for the Department of Treasury, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 126? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 126. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 126 is narrowly adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 127.
Senate Bill 127 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Escar, concerning funding for capital construction and making supplemental appropriations in connection therewith.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 127, the supplemental for capital construction, and ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 127? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 127. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 120. Oh, no. So, I'm sorry. Senate Bill 127 is adopted. It's too late anyway. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 128, two bills.
At the request of the Assistant Majority Leader, Senate Bill 128 will be laid over two bills. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1108.
House Bill 1108 by the Representatives Liston and Hooten, also Senator Tate, concerning measures to expand the ability of non-resident electors to participate in the governance of special districts in connection with allowing non-resident electors who own taxable property within the special district to vote in special district elections and allowing such electors to serve on special district boards in non-voting capacity.
Representative Liston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move Amendment L004 and ask that it be displayed.
Representative Liston, would you like to move House Bill 1108 itself and then the committee report,
Yes.
and then we'll go from there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move House Bill 1108 and the committee report as amended, and also Amendment L004 and ask that it be displayed.
All right. The bill and the committee report have been moved. That was going to be my question, as well as whether the amendment is to the committee report or to the bill itself.
Committee report.
All right, so we're going to take back as is out of order the motion to amend the bill, and we'll consider the committee report from State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee and can get to that amendment here in a moment after we finish that process.
Very good. So moved.
All right, to the committee report, Representative Liston.
Very good. Well, members, what the committee, what they did on the committee report is that it clarifies who can vote for the board of directors, and it also clarifies that the elections are not part of the regular November coordinated elections. And I asked for an aye on the committee report.
Any further discussion on the State Affairs Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the State Affairs Committee report to House Bill 1108. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Liston.
Very good. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and move L004. I would like to move, let me get it out here, Amendment L004 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L004 has been moved. It is not going to be entirely displayed because it is a multi-page amendment, but members, it has been delivered to your desks in coordination with the rules. Representative Liston.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this Goldenrod Committee report was laid on your desk here about a week ago, and even though it looks long and intimidating, it's really not. This amendment was brought to us and encouraged to us by the county clerks to use as verification for signatures in their regular coordinated elections that are normally in November. So what this amendment really does is that it asks that the requirements for the municipal elections and the county elections for signature guarantees are applied also for the special district elections. And this is an amendment. It's strongly supported by the county clerks. It's a good amendment, and it makes a good bill even better. I ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on L004? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L004 to House Bill 1108. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. Amendment L004 is adopted. To the bill.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, I would ask that Amendment L006 be displayed.
Do you move Amendment L006?
Oh, excuse me. Hold on. Now you do.
Representative Liston, do you move L006?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move L006 and I ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L006 has been moved and is properly displayed. Representative Liston.
Very good. Members, what this does, there's 4 parts to it. On lines roughly 3 through 7, the gist of this it applies only to special district elections with 1,000 voters or less. We've tried to narrow this down, keep it real tight, so that for your smaller special districts, this bill will only apply to voters that have 1,000 voters or less. We're not interested in having large special districts with 5 or 10 or 20,000 voters, so this keeps it very, very narrow.
Listen, I hate to interrupt you quickly. It's been pointed out to me that L006 as drafted is an amendment to the committee report that we have already adopted, and so we can't amend the committee report. So as much as I said it had been properly displayed, L006 can't be considered at this time because it's amending a committee report that we've already adopted. And so there could be, I don't know whether there could be another amendment that would take care of this, but given that we have already adopted the committee report, I can't consider this amendment to a already adopted committee report.
Okay. All right. Can we take a break for a second?
To the bill.
You guys need a quick recess?
Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask that the committee stand in a brief recess.
At the request of the Assistant Majority Leader, the committee will stand in recess. The committee will come back to order. And we'll recognize the illustrious Assistant Majority Leader, Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Illustrious Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1108 until tomorrow.
At the request of the Assistant Majority Leader, House Bill 1108 will be laid over until tomorrow. I know, the excitement builds. Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1106 until tomorrow.
House Bill, at the request of the Assistant Majority Leader, House Bill 1106 will additionally be laid over till tomorrow. Mr. Assistant Majority Leader, do you have any sort of motion with respect to Senate Bill 128? Mr. Assistant Majority Leader, anything you want to say about Senate Bill 128, which is now coming up on the calendar?
I sure do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 128, 3 bills.
At the request of the Assistant Majority Leader, the Senate Bill 128 will be laid over 3 bills. This is all well within the rules, Representative Buck. House Bill 10, Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1039.
House Bill 1039 by Representative Escar, Senator Moreno, concerning identity documents for transgender persons.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1039 and the Health Insurance Committee report. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the committee, on this bill, we had to run a strike below because we wanted to be sure that our bill lines up directly with the Department of Revenue and the Colorado Department of Public Health Care rules that they have put in. We wanted to make sure everything was congruent. That was the strike below.
Any further discussion on the Health Insurance Committee report? Representative Baisley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move L012 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L012 has been properly moved. And let's let the suspense grow as it will soon be displayed. Wait. Soon? It will be? There we are. Amendment L012 has been moved and has been properly displayed. Representative Baisley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, members, in thinking about how can this accommodate what is the goal of someone recognizing their identity and yet respecting what the rest of the state is signing up for, in effect. So when we have an official document like a birth certificate, that birth certificate is our assertion as a state, as all citizens, that this person is born on that date, born in this location, and so on. So what this bill does, or what this amendment does, excuse me, is it maintains what is traditional, which is to include at the time of birth the sex of male or female, and to allow that birth certificate to later be amended by the person to whom that birth certificate belongs, but to be amended not to change the sex, which is not the sexual identity, let me point out, but is the sex, but to remove that sex so that it is not in conflict with their identity. So that is my amendment, which I'm trying to accommodate everyone's interest in this, and so I move that it be amended. Thank you. That it be passed.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I urge a very strong no vote on this amendment. There's a serious issue. When you go forward and you use your birth certificate for a form of identity, for whatever reason you may need it for, and you hand it to someone and it's stamped amended, that's going to raise some red flags. That's going to make people question things. That puts people who have changed their identity at risk. Serious risk. I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Baisley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This does not request that the birth certificate be stamped amended. This merely says that the variable of sex be removed.
Representative Beckman. I'm sorry, no, Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you are removing that, that is something that the department themselves have already told me they have a major issue with. I'd ask for a no vote on this.
Any further discussion on Amendment L012? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L012. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. No! Amendment L012 fails. Representative Beckman? Representative Beckman. We are on the committee report. Members for House Bill 1039.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L013 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L013 has been moved and is properly displayed.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is somewhat of a logistics amendment. And so through the testimony, we heard a lot about how you go about changing your identity and changing the documents that go along with that. Because this is a formal identity change. These are historical documents, and they're identification documents. And so how the strike below is written, and actually the bill, it's kind of disconnected. What this bill would do would that requiring at the birth certificate a court-ordered name change, which is what the original bill did, and it's not that expensive to do. But with that, they can then go to the driver's license, motor vehicle, and get the name change, because they will have a court-ordered document. Otherwise, otherwise, one of the issues that you have is the change of identity, and the marriage certificate, divorce decree, or court order in hand are the only way you can go and update your Social Security number or other mortgages, tax documents. And so this adds some continuity. It's actually in line with what other states have done, is that it's court order, birth certificate change, and then driver's license change. I just think that this amendment would bring some continuity and then just not have driver's license changed without, all identification changed. That concerns me. Colorado is keen on fraud and identity theft, and I know that those are things we don't like to think about, but we should be aware of them when we're changing these very formal identity documents.
Representative Herod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I ask for a no vote on this amendment. This goes to the heart of the privacy issue. We know that transgender Coloradans are being targeted at rates that are at least 5 to 1, the general population, if not more. And this just opens it up for more targeting. When we post these things publicly, it means they're searchable, they're Googleable, and that is putting people at risk. The reality is that there still is discrimination, harassment, and violence that is being perpetrated against the transgender community. When they change their identity documents, it should not be something that's open for public view. And so in such an easy and accessible way. And so for that reason, I ask for a no vote on the amendment and a yes on this bill.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was not my intent. Actually, we heard a lot of testimony about how you go about changing your documents. And one of the person that was testifying made a comment that you have to have a court order to change. Of course, you have to have a court order to change these documents. And so, because I do think we set people up to not have identity documents that are aligned. And it's important for mortgages, Social Security numbers. There's a whole bunch of documents you have to change. So my intent is that there would be continuity in, after hearing some of the testimony, that there would be continuity in these documents. And so to change your driver's license, there would have been a court order to change the birth certificate.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's already in current law that if you change your name, you have to go before the court. That's still in this bill. We're just saying if you're changing your name only because you're changing your gender, you do not have to go to court, just like we do for victims.
Representative Beckman.
There's different victim statuses that do not have to publicize. We want to make sure that this is in line with those who don't have to publicize their information. We don't want the publication and have to go to court if the only reason you're going is because you're changing your gender. If you're changing your name, you still have to go to court.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern is that we have a driver's license that is not connected to other documents, and that's concerning to me.
Any additional comment? Representative Heatherton.
I'm sorry.
Just one more comment. So you can already change on your Social Security document, and so this bill, without this amendment, actually does go to the continuity issue, congruity issue. And so again, I ask for an aye vote on the bill and a no vote on the amendment.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you. And maybe it's just a question that I have then, is that if you change your driver's license, are you able then to change without a court order? Because a court order makes everything, you can change everything. Does it allow you to change mortgage documents and other documents that people need to, be functional in life, your credit and all of those things? It was my understanding when I was talking to some of the people that came to testify is that to change these other documents, you have to have a court order. It is a divorce decree, a court order, to have that continuity. I understand what the bill is trying to do, but I'm just looking long-term of how do you have these very formal identification documents aligning so that you don't have, identity theft or other things that may arise from changing these very formal identity documents.
Any further discussion on L013? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L013. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. No! L013 has failed. To the bill.
It passed the committee report.
Representative Eskar.
We passed the committee report.
Was that all to the committee report? I apologize. So we're now back to the Health and Insurance Committee report. Any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Health and Insurance Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. Now to the bill. We are to House Bill 1039. Representative Titone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a bill that's really going to streamline the process for trans people to get their documents in order the way they need to get them. There's a lot of hoops that people have to jump through, and a lot of unnecessary costs that need to go into the current process. So there's been a lot of rules changes that have already happened, and this is just going to put that into statute and make sure that people have the privacy moving forward, because there's a lot of things that can happen along the way that people can dig up and get people in trouble when they get older. So this is about helping a lot of people, including kids that grow up being trans, being themselves for a really long time. And I support this bill 100%. I think this is a long time coming, so I urge a yes vote on this bill.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1039? Seeing none, the question is before us is the adoption of House Bill 1039. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 1039 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1019.
House Bill 1019 by Representative Coleman, all Senator Williams, concerning continuing professional competency requirements for psychotherapists.
Representative Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1019 in the House Health and Insurance Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amendment L001 simply required the State Board of Registered Psychotherapists to adopt rules establishing a continuing professional competency program for registered psychotherapists. With the rules being established, the board can deny the applicant a license, registration, or certification, or deny the reinstatement of a license, registration, or certification. I ask for an aye vote on Amendment L001.
Yes, to the committee report itself, right?
That's committee report.
Oh, I'm sorry, have you moved an amendment to the committee?
Oh, I do?
Please hold. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves. Okay. I know you've been shy about that, but if you need to. Representative Coleman.
Thank you. I have two amendments to the committee report, and I move L002.
Amendment L002 to the committee report has been moved and has now been displayed. Representative Coleman.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Simply creates a minimum standard for professional competency to enter the profession, including the requirement of having obtained a high school diploma or a passing score on the GED exam. I ask for an aye vote on L002.
Any discussion on L002 to the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L002. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment L002 to the committee report is adopted. Representative Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also move L003 to the committee of the whole and ask it to be properly displayed.
Do you move that amendment to the committee report? We'll take it. Amendment L003 to the committee report has been moved and properly displayed. Representative Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. L003 is simply a conforming amendment that amends the Title 12 recodification bill to ensure that my bill will not be superseded by HB 19-1172. This is a technical conforming amendment to harmonize my bill on the Title 12 recodification bill. I ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on L003 to the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L003. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. L003 is adopted. Representative Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for an aye vote on HB 19-1019. On the committee report.
Question before us is the adoption of the Health and Insurance Committee report to House Bill 1019 as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Anyone? Those opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill ultimately makes it so that the State Board of Registered Psychotherapists adopts rules, continuing professional competency program for registered psychotherapists. With rules being established by the board, a psychotherapist must demonstrate the professional competence, or the board may deny the applicant a license, registration, or certification, or deny the reinstatement of a license, registration, or certification. I ask for an aye vote on HB 19-1019.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1019? Representative Wantine. And Caraveo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We heard this in the Health Committee. I did not support the bill. I continue to not support the bill. And I feel like there needs to be a lot more work to discover how psychotherapists work within our mental health community. Some of them do have advanced degrees, but a lot of them don't and really don't have the necessary training to deal with people who have mental health issues. And so I'm really concerned about their work with people who have mental health issues. So I would ask, and furthermore, this will be going for review next year under the Mental Health Practice Act. And so I would ask that whatever we do with the psychotherapists and their relationship with DORA, that we wait to have further investigation through the Mental Health Practice Act sunset next year. So for this bill, I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Caraveo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also was a no vote in committee. My concern really is that this adds legitimacy to a group of who is calling themselves professionals that does not have to have any actual training for the job that they perform. Any of us could tomorrow decide that we are a psychotherapist and put up a shingle and start providing therapy. I'm concerned that the continuing medical education or the continuing education for this profession would be decided upon by the group themselves. It would not be an overarching body that would do that. And I don't really understand what the education would be building upon, since there are no requirements to become a psychotherapist in the first place. So I agree with Representative Wantine. I think there is a lot more work to be done when looking into this group of practitioners that can be done next year with a more overarching bill. And I continue to be against this bill.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, too, was a no vote on this bill in committee for many of the same reasons that both of my colleagues have expressed. I was, quite frankly, a little shocked to learn that you could become a psychotherapist with absolutely no education. And while, yes, continuing education is a great idea, we need a baseline. From my understanding, all you have to do is take an open book, online, multiple choice exam, jurisprudence exam, that simply talks about the law and does not address behavioral health. So for that reason, I would also ask for no vote.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Coleman, so I'm hearing concern about no education, no supervision. Is that true in this bill?
Representative Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Wilson. So in this bill, the only thing you have to do as a registered to become a registered psychotherapist is take an open book jurisprudence test, which can be taken online and have certification with the state. So it's not like having to go to college, having to have a full body of work. And my intent with this bill is to say that over the next year, before the sunset review, people can continue to practice in this profession without having any accountability, given that there is no current baseline standard. I just think we should have something in place to have some kind of accountability between now and that point.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Representative Coleman. I appreciate that. So if I get this straight, I can take an unsupervised open book test and become a registered psychotherapist and practice with no supervision? That's pretty spooky if I could do that.
Congratulations on what I believe is the first use of spooky I have seen in the well during my time. Any further discussion on House Bill 1019? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1019. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No! House Bill 1019 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read that title of House Bill 1007.
House Bill 1007 by Representative Sirota concerning the establishment of contribution limits under the Fair Campaign Practices Act for candidates for county offices.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 19-107, the committee report from State Veterans and Military Affairs, and the committee report from Appropriations.
To the Appropriations report.
This is just a small appropriation to allow the Secretary of State's office to implement the bill.
Any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report to House Bill 1007? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the State Affairs report.
This is an amendment to simply conform this bill to current statute related to unaffiliated candidates and candidates for minor party office in terms of equal protection of the law when they are running in a general election.
Any further discussion on the State Affairs Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the State Affairs Committee report to House Bill 1007. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill is a common sense measure that puts in place contribution limits for Colorado's county candidates. I think it is odd and probably unwise that we don't have any limits at this point. In our county races, we regularly see contributions of $5,000 and many examples of extremely large contributions, in particular in our county commissioner races in the amounts of $10,000, $30,000, even $40,000. And it doesn't mean that there was quid pro quo or bribery, but even the appearance thereof is problematic, and using contribution limits to avoid quid pro quo or the appearance thereof has been a long-established practice affirmed by both Citizens United and McCutcheon decisions. And I believe these limits are important for preserving the integrity of our electoral process. They keep candidates accountable, and they help prevent even the appearance of impropriety. And I ask for a favorable vote.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Sirota. I offer Amendment L005. I move L005 to the bill and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L005 has been moved and is properly displayed. Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill if we're going to treat some some candidates one way and some candidates another, we should treat them all the same. And I am asking that on page 2 that you strike county and substitute local government. And on page 3, I'm asking that lines 24 through 26 be stricken and changed to, for purposes of this subsection, 1.5 local government office mean any elected office of a county, municipality, city and county, home rule municipality, home rule county, and members of the Board of Directors of a special district, and members of a Board of Education of a school district. As a former county clerk, and also a former county treasurer and been through local elections, I can't say in rural county that there has been any corruption of local elections, and I can understand why possibly the sponsor brought this bill forward if there has been problems in metro areas of the state, but this will be a problem for rural counties. But if we are going to go this route, let's treat all candidates the same. Thank you.
Representative Sirota.
Mr. Chair, I ask for a title ruling.
Title ruling has been requested. The committee will stand in recess. Order. Based on the title of the bill referring to candidates for county offices and not offices for other types of offices, I find this amendment does not fall under the title. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I voted no in committee on this bill, and for one simple reason. I do not believe that we need to be putting more campaign contribution limits on county offices. What the bill is aiming to solve would actually exacerbate the problem. We have big problems with outside moneyed individuals and groups that already play in our county elections. And if this bill were to come in and kneecap county candidates and inhibit their ability to actually fundraise, that's going to give these outside groups more of an outsized say and voice in the election process. So with that, Mr. Chair, I move L002 to the bill and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L002 has been moved and properly displayed to the amendment. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what this amendment would do, members, is it would allow candidates who would face off against rich individuals who could self-finance that do not have these campaign contribution limits imposed on them as the bill is written. It would allow those individuals who are handicapped the ability to go back and fundraise at an amount 5 times greater than what is currently allowed in the bill. This is sort of evening the playing field, allowing candidates the ability to, in a fair way, compete, especially when you have millionaires and rich individuals that would seek this kind of office. I think this is a fair way to go, and I'd ask the committee to vote yes.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I would ask for a no vote on this amendment. I think the intent of the bill is to bring parity with our county offices, with those of all, or at least the state offices, in terms of having a contribution limit. The voters have already decided on this. They voted on this in November and said, no, we don't want this. It didn't pass on the ballot in November. So why would we stick it into the bill here? Why would we supersede the will of the voters by putting what they've already expressly said they don't want to do to state offices and put that on county offices, which I believe also would be a shock to county candidates who are for the first time going to have to deal with contribution limits should this bill pass. And so, members, the voters have spoken. Let's speak as well by saying no.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Melton. We were doing so good this year, agreeing on a lot of different things. I obviously disagree with my esteemed colleagues' comments on this. First off, I'd like to point out that the voters weren't actually asked about county offices, number one. Number two, we need to look out for candidates that don't have money. Candidates that are not as fortunate as others, who maybe don't have the kind of fundraising lists that, another candidate may not have, especially if a rich individual does come in and try to buy the election. I mean, that's really what I think is problematic with this bill, is that we have right now with this bill the ability of a rich individual to come in, among other entities, to come in and actually buy an election. And I think that's the last thing that we should be doing here in this chamber. We need to be able to ensure that actual parity exists in these elections, and that rich individuals aren't going to be able to actually buy an election, and so we can allow those individuals who don't have the money or the means the ability to at least ask. I think there's nothing wrong with allowing individuals, especially in this situation, the ability to ask other people to contribute and participate in the election process through a donation. So I would ask for a yes vote.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, and members, I also ask for a no vote. In addition to the points that Rep. Melton made, I believe that this language is substantially similar to a part of federal law that was invalidated by the United States Supreme Court in a 2008 case on First Amendment grounds. I don't think we should be putting constitutionally deficient language on our statute books. I ask for a no vote.
Any further discussion on L002? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just point out that if that's the case, if we're going to talk about Supreme Court precedent, then maybe the bill is flawed itself. So I would ask respectfully for a yes on this amendment.
Representative Weissman.
Multiple court cases have upheld campaign finance limits as preventative of corruption and the appearance of corruption in candidates for public office, and limits have been upheld that are substantially lower than this. So I respectfully submit to this body that there is no First Amendment issue with the establishment of limits in the introduced bill. I ask for a no on the amendment and a yes on the bill.
Any further discussion on L002? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L002 to the bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Amendment L002 is lost. To the bill, Representative Williams. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a glutton for pain. I do understand the intent of this bill. I think there are some good intentions here, but I do think it does fall short. So with that, I move L004 and ask that it be displayed. Let's fight dark money, guys. Let's fight dark money.
Let's fight dark money, yes.
Amendment L004 has been moved. It has been properly displayed. To the amendment, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what this amendment would do is it would help, again, bring parity to a potential problem during our elections. We have outside groups, 527s, IECs, other campaign-type groups that do spend money in these elections. And what this amendment would do is that if these groups are spending $100,000 or more in these elections, then the candidate that the candidate that would be affected by that would have the ability to ask 5 times more than what the contribution limits are currently in the bill. What this would do is I would think it would allow, again, candidates the ability, if they came in the crosshair of an outside organization, of a potentially dark money organization, it would allow them the ability to ask for more money so that they'd be able to properly defend themselves or effectively campaign. I think that's not unreasonable. I think what you see in Colorado is you see, specifically with our citizens, are concerned about outside influences coming in and affecting our election, outside influences that are coming in. I think this is a good measured approach to ensure that we have actual equity and parity in our elections, and allows these candidates the ability to properly defend themselves should they need to. So I'd ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Williams, you're right. We've been feeling the love this session. It is Valentine's Day. I'm so glad that you brought this. I kind of agree with you, and I hope that we could do something like get rid of Citizens United, or stop saying that corporations are people, because I think that's where your amendment is going. But given that the title of this bill is concerning the establishment of contribution limits under the Fair Campaign Practice Act for candidates for county office, I don't think this fits under the title, so I ask for a title ruling.
Committee will stand in recess. The committee will come back to order. Having reviewed the amendment, there is some language about spending that is not by a county candidate, but the only reason that it's there is to trigger different county contribution limits, which is the title and purpose of the bill, so I find the amendment does fall under the title. Representative Serota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This changes the limits, and I still ask for a no vote.
Any further discussion on L004? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't beat a dead horse here. I just want to say that, again, there are outside influences coming in from other parts of certainly counties, but I'd say even outside the state, and we need to make sure that county candidates have the ability to properly fundraise and defend themselves if these outside dark moneyed sources are coming in and unduly trying to influence our elections. So please vote yes on this amendment.
Any further discussion on L004? Seeing none, under the wire, Representative Soper.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak on this amendment as well and rise in support of it. Having run a couple of local campaigns for county commissioners, I can tell you that really outside money does play a factor in these races, and that this allows a candidate who's a poor candidate to actually level the playing field. And that's why I support this amendment. It's almost a clawback provision. So I too rise in support. Thank you.
For sure this time. Any other discussion on Amendment L004? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L004 to House Bill 1007. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. L004 has failed. To the bill, Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L007 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L007 has been moved. It's making its way. It has been properly displayed. To the amendment, Representative Soper.
Oh, thank you. What this amendment does is it says that the campaign contribution limits should equal that of state House and state Senate candidates. And to quote a member of this body recently, he said, "What's good for the goose is good for the gander." and it's a great quote, by the way, because we shouldn't necessarily pick one office and say we're going to have a much higher campaign contribution limit, and then pick another office and say that we're going to have a much lower contribution limit. So this is more about equality than anything else, and it would look to the future. And Mr. Chair, I would also like to move Amendment L006 as a substitute amendment.
Amendment L006. We will recognize the hostile Soper amendment to the original Soper amendment. We'll see what the sponsor feels about this. We'll give the sponsor an opportunity to defend himself against Representative Soper. Amendment L006 as a substitute amendment has been moved and is properly displayed. Representative Soper. Would you like to discuss your amendment, Representative Soper, L006?
Yes, I'll speak to it. So what this one does is it specifically says $400, which is the current campaign contribution cap for members of this body and members of the other body, dare I say, Senate. L006 looks to the current law, and I know some of you are wondering how this is different than L007. L007 looks to possible future changes in the law and would protect this bill should it change. We know that it would still have the caps of what would be for state Senate or state House. And I ask for a yes vote.
Any further discussion on L006 as a substitute amendment, Representative Sirota?
I ask for a no vote on this amendment. We heard a lot of testimony from different individuals in committee about the $2,500 amount, and we found it to be a very happy medium between people who thought that there should be no limits and people who thought that it was too high. And we have some counties that are larger than Senate districts, and we feel this is an appropriate amount to allow candidates for county office to raise the funds that they need to raise to run a good race, but also place limits to avoid that appearance of quid pro quo. And I ask for no vote.
Any further discussion on L006 as a substitute to L007? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L006 as a substitute to L007. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. L006, the substitute amendment, is failed. To L007, which still exists, Representative Soper, if you'd like to address it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of Amendment L007. This one ties the caps to members of the State House or State Senate. It's one that I believe is about equality. It treats all candidates the same, and actually it's really good for those people who donate. Because I don't know about you, but I had many donors that were a bit confused as to what the contribution caps were for the State House, mainly because they had given to members who were running for Congress. And what this does is it says to the public, if $400 is the cap, then it would be the cap for everyone that has a contribution cap. And that's why this amendment is important, and I would like to ask for your consideration. Thank you.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I would ask for a no vote on this. You're right. What is good for the goose is good for the gander, but we are not comparing gooses and ganders here because counties and states operate very differently. We are elected by our districts are drawn by population. Each of us represents about 75,000 people, and the Senate about 140,000 people. County offices aren't the same. Many districts either elect county-wide or they have districts, and sometimes that is not based on a population. So I think that Representative Sirota struck a good balance with the amount that's in the bill and not with the $400 amount because this isn't the same. We need to make sure that we're not hamstringing or handicapping something that's running in, say, a very large county, and at the same time being able to address very small counties as well. I think that the balance with this amount is good and proper, and I would ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Landgraf to L007.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is very important, and it does come back to, I'm sorry, we may not be speaking about geese and ganders, but fair is fair. We talk about equality. Why should we not be holding everybody to the same level of donation as we're held. And not only that, this is going to seriously hurt people who live in rural Colorado who do not have necessarily the same ability to raise funds that people from large cities, like our friends from Denver, Colorado Springs, even Pueblo. We're talking about smaller communities where it's more difficult to raise money, and we're just creating caps on people that shouldn't exist.
Is there any further discussion on L007 with or without references to waterfowl? Representative Soper.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I promise I will not refer to waterfowl in my comments here. There is a simple answer to what my good colleague here was talking about. L007 does not refer to any specific caps. Instead, it refers to what the caps are for the State House and State Senate. And if we want to raise that, let's raise it for the State House and State Senate, and assuming this bill passes, it would be raised for everyone. So it would be like a equality there, and it would be tied to that. So I please would ask you to consider this amendment. Thank you.
Any further discussion on L007? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L007 to House Bill 1007. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. L007 fails. To the bill. Anyone? Any further discussion on House Bill 10007? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 10007. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. House Bill 1007 is adopted. Mr. Assistant Minority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 128. 3 bills.
At the request of the Assistant Majority Leader, Senate Bill 128 will be laid over 3 bills. Mr. Randall, please read the title to House Bill 1010.
House Bill 1010 by Representatives Mullica and Landgraf, also Senator Gardner, concerning the licensing of freestanding emergency departments.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1010, the Finance Committee and the Appropriations Committee reports.
How about the Health and Insurance Committee report and the Appropriations
Health
report?
and Insurance Committee report, the Finance, all the committee reports.
I will accept that as a motion for the Health and Insurance report and the Appropriations report. To the Appropriations report, Representative Mullica.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is a good bill. This is a bill that we worked on last year, that was worked on last year a little bit. This bill is going to ensure that if you're an ER and you say you're an ER, that you provide the services of an ER. We worked with the CDPHE on this bill to make sure that we have an...
We're on the committee report right now. Is there anything you want to tell us about what we did in the committee in the Appropriations Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize. We had a minor amendment in the Health and Insurance Committee, just technical, making sure that it's the same place in statute or the same definition in statute, and then on the Appropriation Committee, we just had the appropriation amendment.
All right. Is there any further discussion of the Appropriations Committee report to House Bill 1010? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the Health and Insurance Committee report. Representative Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the Health Insurance Committee report, we just had a technical amendment, like I said, just making sure that this definition was consistent throughout statute.
Any further discussion on the Health and Insurance Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Health and Insurance Committee report to House Bill 1010. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The Health and Insurance Committee report is adopted. Now to the bill, Representative Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like I was saying, members, this is a good bill. We're going to make sure that these freestanding ERs are licensed appropriately, that we're creating a license in which they can be held accountable, and that we're going to ensure that if you say you're an ER, that you're providing the services that an ER is supposed to provide. We had CDPHE support on this bill. This bill passed unanimously out of all of the committees that it went, or out of the Finance and the Health and Insurance Committee, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this bill does create a new license, but these facilities are already licensed. Just gives them an appropriate license, and it does have a net revenue gain. Vote yes,
Any
please.
additional discussion on House Bill 1010? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1010. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 1010 is adopted. Mr. Randall, please read the title of, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1032 till the end of the second reading calendar.
At the request of the Majority Leader, House Bill 1032 will be laid over till the end of the second reading calendar. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1127.
House Bill 1127 by Representatives Garnett and Lontine, all Senators Fenwick and Fields, concerning the appointment of the Lieutenant Governor to serve concurrently as the Director of the Office of Saving People Money on Health Care.
Representative Lontine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1127 and the committee report.
To the Appropriations Committee report, Representative Lontine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our committee, our appropriations amendment added the funding for the office of the governor's office, to the Office of Saving People Money. We appropriated some money to help pay the salary for the lieutenant governor to serve as a director. I ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report on House Bill 1127. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Garnett, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for all your hard work. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you, sir. Please proceed.
Members, this is a good governance bill. House Bill 1127 permits the Lieutenant Governor to serve concurrently as the Lieutenant Governor and the Director of the Office of Saving People Money. This aligns with the practice of the previous administration, which I think is a good one, where the Lieutenant Governor, where the administration came to the legislature and made sure that we were included in the discussions around what the Lieutenant Governor wanted to do if there was a dual role. So if you would remember, in the case of Lieutenant Governor Garcia, he was the Executive Director of the Department of Higher Education. In the case of Donna Lynn, she was the Chief Operating Officer. And here, Diane Primavera would lead the administrative efforts to tackle the high cost of health care here in Colorado. I think it's very appropriate for the executive branch and the legislative branch to interact this way, and it's a good governance bill, and I would urge an aye vote.
Any further discussion on Representative Lontine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just wanted to add to the Majority Leader's comments, specifically around former Representative and now Lieutenant Governor Diane Primavera, who I had the opportunity to serve with my first 2 years here in the legislature on the Health Committee, and I believe she's uniquely qualified to take this position on. Her not only personal experiences with her health care issues help qualify her for that, but also her experience in the Medicaid office. She was a real leader in bringing out issues that, frankly, I didn't recognize or realize as we were working on bills. And I know that she is will have the ability to lead on this issue and really help consumers on health care costs. So I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some questions about this. Number one, I don't disagree that Lieutenant Governor Primavera is qualified. She did run for Lieutenant Governor and she won that seat. But we did not elect her to also be a department head. And I don't understand how one person can do two jobs at the same time, whether they're qualified or not. How do you devote your time to being Lieutenant Governor and your time to being a department head? And my other question is, would this not be considered double dipping?
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my good friend for raising those important questions. This is going to be an office within the governor's office, and so she would be a director of an office and not a department. And so I hear your concern if it was being lieutenant governor and heading an entire department, but this is just an office. And again, I trust the first floor, and I trust the governor when he makes the decision that who should lead and direct an office within his office. And so I think it's important that we trust that if the governor gets an opportunity to make all the appointments that he wants for the offices that he's in charge of. But it's important, if it's the lieutenant governor, that the legislature has a role in that, and that is what we have done in the past. And so it is not double dipping. This is the process that we have had in place since Lieutenant Governor Garcia was here.
Representative, we're going to let Landgraf back up first, but stay excited. Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Majority Leader Garnett, I have a question. You mentioned that she is in charge of an office, not a department. I still don't understand how that qualifies somebody to have a salary as lieutenant governor and then as the head of an office. Do other heads of offices get salaries in addition to an elected position? I'm just confused.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this will probably be the last time I kind of talk about this issue, but Jane Norton did the exact same thing.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I felt compelled to come up here because I was the only no vote in committee, and I just want to explain to the chamber why I voted no. In committee, before I cast that vote, I did explain to the committee that everything that had been said about our current lieutenant governor and our governor, I agreed with. I think that putting together an office of saving people money on health insurance, albeit it's a funny name, is a great idea. And having someone who has expertise in healthcare and health insurance at the helm is also a good idea. The reason why I voted no and I was troubled with this bill was because, to me, when you're elected lieutenant governor, you serve fully as lieutenant governor and not in a secondary position as well. And I've seen that done in other areas where people have tried to balance two jobs at the same time, especially when one job is a 40-hour-a-week job and the other one is also perhaps a 40 or maybe even 60 or 70 or 80 an hour a week job. And I see that as being a real conflict right there. And there's also a conflict in where your loyalties lie. I mean, are your duties to the office of lieutenant governor, or are your duties to being at the head of the office of saving people money? I think you really can do both to a limited extent, but maybe not be as proficient as the taxpayers and voters would expect. And that's why I voted no. I would like to comment on the majority leader's comment about a former lieutenant governor who had done something similar. I was actually against that at the same time, and I believe we've actually had other lieutenant governors that have tried to double up on their roles within the administration and accept compensation for that. I have been consistent in my reasoning that that was wrong, regardless of political party. I think that if we have someone like our current lieutenant governor who would be perfect for the job of saving people money, she should fully accept that position, and we could appoint someone else to be lieutenant governor. I just don't believe you can do both with the proficiency that the people of Colorado expect and deserve. Thank you.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to respond to the majority leader's comment about a former lieutenant governor. and I would say two wrongs do not make a right, and it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Wrong is wrong.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move amendment, I will move amendment L002 and ask to be properly displayed.
Amendment L002 has been moved. It has been moved and is properly displayed. Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is in spirit of Valentine's Day as well, because we love the voters so much. We want to make sure they can petition their government on this particular bill. But also, seriously, folks, the safety clause should be used very, very sparingly. I don't think this is an emergency. I think the Office of Saving People Money is a lovely title, but it certainly doesn't warrant a safety clause. I ask for your yes vote.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an emergency. People in my district and across the state are deciding this month whether to pay for their health insurance premium or their mortgage or their child care. This is an emergency. We need to act now. This office is one of those pieces of how we need to act now. I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect, that's not what this bill is about, or this amendment is about. This amendment strikes language that says the General Assembly hereby determines and declares that this act is necessary for the immediate preservation of public peace, health, and safety. What this bill is about is getting a bonus to someone as soon as possible, and this just would delay it, I don't know, a couple weeks. So I don't know if it's that vital that we get a bonus to a government official that quickly.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't going to be as serious. I do support the amendment because it's in line with the long history and tradition of House District 15. As you all know, my esteemed predecessor, Douglas Bruce, would be absolutely in favor of this amendment, and I couldn't agree more. When I think of the safety clause, I think of Zika and zombies. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not, it is not, we don't need a safety clause on this bill, and I would ask that you support this amendment.
Any further discussion on L002? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L002. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Amendment L002 is lost. To the bill. Any further discussion on House Bill 1127? Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would like to ask the sponsors, we keep talking about a specific person. We keep hearing the current lieutenant governor mentioned by name. And obviously, we're looking at, we are writing laws that will be in perpetuity. And I know that Article 5 of our Constitution says that the General Assembly shall not pass local or special laws granting to any corporate association or individual any special or exclusive privilege. And I would love to hear a response of if we are singling out a specific person with this legislation and adding and creating a law to benefit a specific person.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1127? Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L001 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment L001 has been moved and is properly displayed. Given the amendment numbers, we can tell the Representative Sane did her homework early, so take notes on that. Amendment L001 has been displayed. Please proceed, Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L003 to substitute L001.
All right. Amendment L001 has been moved. Representative Sane has moved L003 as a substitute amendment. We'll ask that to be displayed. To Amendment L003, Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, in reading this bill, I was a little troubled that we're putting language into the revised statutes that we are affirmatively asking people to vote on whether the acceptance or retention of such appointment shall not result in a forfeiture of the office of lieutenant governor. I think that's up to somebody's conscience, including the lieutenant governor, If she feels that she couldn't do both offices properly, she should be allowed to do one or the other. Same with the rest of this language about being not incompatible, inconsistent, or in conflict with the duties of the Lieutenant Governor or with the duties, powers, and functions of the Director of the Office of Saving People Money on Health Care. It's the same thing. It should be a right of conscience on that. We should not be putting that into law. I very strongly disagree with this language. And that should be up to not only us, but anybody else serving in that capacity, including the Lieutenant Governor. It should be up to her to decide if she can do both offices properly. I urge a yes vote.
Any further discussion on Representative Lontine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge a no vote on this amendment. This has been done before. This is not a new thing. Thank you.
Any further discussion on L003 as a substitute for L001? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L003 as a substitute amendment for L001 on House Bill 1127. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No! Amendment L003 as a substitute is lost. To Amendment L001. Is there any further discussion on the original Amendment L001? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L001 to House Bill 1127. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No! L001 is lost. To the bill, any further discussion? Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's one more point that I was wanting to ask the sponsors about, and that's when we've been talking about prior lieutenant governors that held jobs together. The money came out of the current governor's budget because he has a staffing budget already. And based on the fiscal note here, he's asking for additional money for this. So I was just wanting to know what the justification was for adding new money as opposed to in prior instances of the lieutenant governor having two jobs that he used his existing budget for that. So if either one of you could address that, I'd appreciate an answer.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And when it comes to, the appropriations clause, so when it comes to that half year, it was like $19,000. So I would ask the person who asked the question, Representative Ransom, you may know the answer better than I do since you're on JBC. But I guess that would be a question that JBC could have going forward in the 1920 budget year.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1127? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption. Well, I will make a quick note as the chair that I was disappointed that nobody, members of the committee, noted that representatives and former representatives from Broomfield are outstanding people. I would have appreciated that with respect to Lieutenant Governor Primavera. That said, any further discussion on House Bill 1127? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1127. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 1127 is adopted. Mr. Randall, at long last, please read the title of Senate Bill 128.
Are you excited? Are you excited?
Senate Bill 128 by Senators Moreno and Todd, also Representatives Escar and McLaughlin, concerning adjustments to appropriations of the 2018-19 fiscal state year for the state share of total program funding for school finance and in connection therewith making and reducing appropriations.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 128.
She's bugging me.
Senate Bill 128 has been moved. Representative Escar to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is the annual bill we run every single year on school finance. During the long bill, we determine how much money our school districts are going to be given. In October, they do their counts, and in January, we analyze those counts and we adjust the money that we've given them or taken back at that time. That's what this bill does. It's the school finance bill that happens every single year. And this year, we saw a drop in student counts. We saw a drop in at-risk students, but we also saw an increase in the local share. So that's what's in this bill. That's what the JBC moved forward, and I was so thankful that our House Education Committee Chair decided to be our co-prime on this bill, so I'll let her speak to it if she'd like.
Representative McLaughlin. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have much more to add on this. The schools will be getting their money July 1st when this comes through. It doesn't, schools are prepared for this every year. School districts are. They have reserves, and that's exactly what these reserves are meant to do. So this does not affect schools until July 1st, really.
We urge an aye vote on the bill.
Thank you.
Representative Buck.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I hereby submit House Floor Amendment 001 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Do you move House? That was great language, but do you move L001?
Yes, sir. I move SB 128 L001.
All right, members, the L001 will be partially displayed. It has been distributed to your desk. So that's the front page of it, but it has been properly put on your desk as a multi-page amendment. Representative Buck.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate this moment. This amendment replaces the language in the original bill that would have reduced the state share of education funding by $77.6 million. Oh, that sounds terrible. But I'm asking that this $77.6 million would be pulled from the school districts throughout our state and transferred not to the general fund, but to the budget stabilization factor. Yes. My amendment leaves the state share constant and leaves the $77.6 million where it belongs, in the hands of our educators. And even better, leaving the $77.6 million in the state share that will reduce the dollar value of the budget stabilization factor, thus paying down a debt long overdue to our schools. Folks, we heard the protests. We heard the teachers come down here. We heard them loud and clear. We heard them begging for the dollars to help them educate our children. We owe them this, so I ask you, please support this amendment. Vote yes.
Representative Wilson. Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we're getting to some of the interesting supplementals, colleagues, I wanted to give you a little bit of information about what you're going to be hearing up here in the well. In the interest of full disclosure, there's going to be 4 major deals that you face. I call them the big 4 in education this year. This is the first one, supplementals, which deals with about $77 million. That's the cheapie. You're going to hear about kindergarten, which is $227 million. That's still a cheapie. You're going to hear about school finance, which falls somewhere between 7 and 8 billion with a B. Then you're going to deal with the long bill, which is 30 billion whatever. I don't even know where that one is yet. So as you look at this and deal with it, you're going to be voting on important issues dealing with education. I won't ask for your hands, but I will ask the question: how many of you understand school finance? That's your challenge, colleagues, new ones and old ones alike. If you don't understand it, you might be voting on something that you thought was going to help, and it can actually hinder. For example, this amendment, putting $77 million or leaving that $77 million in there, which I agree, but you understand that means $77 million more dollars we've got to come up with next year to fund school finance before we ever start on the rest of school finance. The $77 million for your districts will not make them whole. So as you look at this, don't say, oh boy, we voted on that, so you all are home free. No, it is not. If you look at your districts, which I have done already, if you look at the current allocation of dollars, just in Chaffee County, where I was superintendent, I'll just use that as an example, the north half of the county will gain $238,109. The south end of the county will lose $112,201. If this amendment passes, they'll gain a portion of that back. I think with Representative Catlin's district out in West End, they lose 200 and some thousand, they'll get back about 35. So you don't ride off in the sunset saying, boy, we sure solved that problem, didn't we? And when we do this, some of the districts that have already gotten dollars will increase the dollars that they get. So some of the rich districts will get richer and some of the poor won't be quite as poor. Now, I'm not telling you this to tell you how to vote. I'm telling you this is not simple. It is not dig in your heels and vote for one amendment over the other. Go into it with your eyes open, colleagues. It is not simple. So as we look at the 77 and we put that towards the budget stabilization factor, that means we lower it below half, well, not quite half a billion, but we're almost halfway to where it was originally. Great job. That means we have to come up with $77 million next year before we start addressing the School Finance Act, which will take somewhere between $300 to $350 million. It will be money that we haven't saved for. So keep your eyes open. If you don't understand it, ask questions. We have people over here that can answer some of those questions. The dynamic trio over here can answer those questions. But I just want to let you know, in full disclosures, we talk about school finance issues, and this is the first one we faced this year. It ain't easy. I've only been here 6 years and spent 40 years in education, 21 as a superintendent, and every year I have to go back to School Finance 101 and figure out what's going on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Wilson. Representative Kipp.
Thank you, Chairman Gray. I would like to offer Amendment L002 as a substitute amendment for L001.
Amendment L002 has been moved by Representative Kipp as a substitute amendment. And likewise, with the original L001, it has been placed on your desks. It will not be displayed in full, but has been placed on your desks to L002. Representative Kipp.
Thank you, and thank you, Representative Wilson, for doing a good job of explaining what's going on, because, yeah, school finance, it's really, really, really complicated, so I'm sorry for that. But let me try and explain why I'm offering this as a substitute amendment. We are trying to preserve some of the money that was saved by students not being in school, right? We don't want to fund students that aren't in the actual classrooms this year. That's not what we're looking at doing. What my amendment would do is it would preserve the base level of per pupil funding that was proposed originally. Instead of losing $14.83 on student average, which would be different for every district, this would actually basically give the school districts another $12.9 million. And we have the numbers if you'd like to look up the numbers for your own district. But I do agree with Representative Wilson that we do need to preserve some of the money for where we can for students for next year. But I think this position is a nice moderate position, which will allow school districts to not have to make the mid-year adjustments to compensate for losing this money in their budgets.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually going to speak to the First Amendment, but I think the Second Amendment. So what I really wanted to say is I wanted to respond to Representative Wilson, because he got up and talked a lot about numbers and students, and the one thing he said that I understood was it's not simple. It's very, very complicated. But the one thing I do understand, every year we have teachers who come to the Capitol, and they absolutely pack the lobby. And there's a few from one of my districts who call me out, and we have a nice talk. They're very friendly, they're very nice, and they are very upset, all of the ones who come. This hopefully will start putting money where it belongs. It will help what needs to be helped, and so I'd ask for a yes vote.
Representative Herod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I support this amendment.
I want you to look at the numbers that that our representative Kip has brought to the table. Specifically, looking at Denver. If we pass the bill without this amendment, Denver Public School will be taking a hit of over $1 million. I don't know if folks have watched the news recently, but we have just come out of a very contentious strike and negotiation. If we take money from the budget, how are they going to pay for those deals that they struck? That is a huge problem for Denver, but members, it's a huge problem for most of our school districts. So I ask for an aye vote on this amendment. Look at how it impacts your specific districts. We need to have this amendment if we want to ensure that our school districts are whole and we don't continue to take against places like my district, Denver Public Schools. So I ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, I'm just going to confuse you further, folks. My colleague, Representative Kipp, said, well, you won't have to worry so much about that mid-year adjustment if we pass this amendment. It depends on who you are. Remember, I told you there were 2 districts in Chaffey County. Buena Vista obviously will not have to adjust it because they were already up $238,000, and they'll gain another $15,000. But Salida on the southern end, they were down $112,201, will gain $18,008. So do that math. They've still got to make an adjustment of something like $93,000, $94,000. So even though this amendment looks like it will take care of the problem, it doesn't alleviate the entire problem. So I just want to make that clear that there will be mid-year adjustments. It just won't be the mid-year adjustment they had to make. It'll be a little bit less of a mid-year adjustment.
Thank you, Representative Wilson. Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anytime we can put monies towards school districts without it having to go back in the general fund and be put back in a formula, I think is a good thing. I really support this amendment.
Representative Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do. My biggest concern, and I just hope everyone, colleagues on both sides, know that the role of government is education. And this is important that we get those monies and get them back to supporting our kids and our teachers. So I am fine with this amendment.
Any further discussion on Amendment L002 as a substitute for L001? Seeing none. I'm sorry, Representative Eskar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As your Joint Budget Committee member, I would ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Any further discussion on L002 as a substitute to L001? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L002 as a substitute amendment for L001. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. L002 as a substitute amendment is adopted. Marilyn, do I need a separate vote now on that, or is that in the bill? We got to pass the bill first. The other one's done. Okay. All right, we are to the bill on Senate Bill 128. Representative Eskar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, although I do not agree necessarily with the amendment that was put on this bill, either way, we have a responsibility to make sure we true up our budgets from last year. We have to move forward. I ask for a yes vote on Senate Bill 128.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 128? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 128. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 128 is adopted. Mr. Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bills 1037 and 1078 until tomorrow.
At the request of the Assistant Majority Leader, House Bills 1037 and 1078 will be laid over until tomorrow. Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since your bill is up next, should I come tag in for you?
That'd be fantastic. Thank
All
you.
right. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1135.
House Bill 1135 by Representative Gray concerning clarification of the income tax credit for retrofitting a residence to increase residents' ability to available for charges made to a residence that benefit a qualified individual's dependent.
Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1135 in the Finance Committee report.
To the committee report.
In the Finance Committee, we clarified the definitions that I'll talk to you about a second when we get to the bill, but we some definitional clarification on what a dependent and a qualifying relative is, and I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye. At least one person say aye, please.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this bill is a clarification to a bill that Representative McKean and I passed last year that provides a tax credit for individuals who need some assistance in retrofitting their home to be able to stay where they live. So there are folks who either because of age or because of condition can't afford to stay in their home without a grab bar, a wheelchair ramp, something like that, and it allows people to age in place within their homes. It's one of the proudest bills that I've ever worked on before. One of the things we discovered in the intervening time since we passed this bill initially is that a lot of folks who can't afford these improvements, the taxpayer who could receive the tax credit is not the person who has the condition. And so before, to take the tax credit, the condition had to be with the person who had the condition and the taxpayer had to be the same, so you couldn't take the tax credit to support your spouse, you couldn't take the tax credit to support your child, you had to take the tax credit to support yourself, and that's just not the realistic situation on the ground for a lot of folks who have these needs where they're trying to age in place and keep folks out of assisted care facilities. We did have a good debate and a couple questions from Representative Beckman actually in the committee, and so I would move L002 for a little bit more cleanup on what the bill does. So I'd move L002 and ask it be displayed.
The amendment is properly before us. Please proceed. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a discussion in the Finance Committee about whether if you had a situation where, because we're allowing dependents or spouses to take this credit, that whether an individual taxpayer, if you filed separately between two spouse and a dependent or the taxpayer, if you filed separately, could somebody basically double dip? Could they take the credit for themselves and could their spouse take the credit for them? And that was never the intent of any of this. It was a really good question that came from Representative Beckman and a few other people. The intent of this amendment is to make sure that that doesn't happen, that for any given qualified individual, they're only able to take this credit once, and I would ask for an aye vote on L002.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. We had good conversations. Actually, this tax credit is almost just a technical fix, but there was some concern with adding new people that may not be the tax filer, that we would have fraud. And with all tax refunds and tax credit refunds and tax credits, we need to be very, very careful that they go to the people that we intend. So I support this amendment.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L2? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L2. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. To the bill, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only other thing I would note is that when we adopted this credit last year, there is a cap of $1 million total per year that stays the same right now. So there's zero fiscal note. We're not exposing any additional general fund or anything like that. We're just clarifying who can take this credit subject to the same limits right now, but there's no fiscal impact because we have a hard limit that already exists. I'd ask for a yes vote on House Bill 1135.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1135? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 35 as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1135 is passed.
Thank you. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1114.
House Bill 1114 by Representatives Catlin and Valdez D. concerning the implementation of state law by the Commissioner of Agriculture for federal produce safety standards for farms.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you, sir.
Thank you. This is, I got to gather myself up here for a minute. Forgot what I was doing. Today we bring you House Bill 1114. I wanted to get your approval on the House Committee report from the Rural Affairs and Ag Committee. We amended that, amended the bill, and I'd ask for your approval.
And I apologize, I was trying to, did you move the bill on the committee report from
Not
Rural
yet.
Affairs? Okay.
I'd like to move House Bill 191114 for consideration and a favorable report from the committee report.
All right, to the committee report. Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee report, we amended, there was an amendment brought forward by the proponents. We cleaned up some language that when we drafted that bill, it left some questions in regards to the power of the Commissioner of Agriculture. We've spelled that out so that anybody in agriculture is going to be treated just like anyone else. And that amendment passed. We've attached it to this bill. And I would ask for a favorable report, or a favorable report on the amendment and on the bill.
Any further discussion of the Rural Affairs Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Rural Affairs Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Valdez Donald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Representative Catlin for bringing this bill forward with myself. This bill is important produce safety for the state of Colorado. With us up here, and also in committee, we had Takata Farms come and talk to us about the importance of it. And with that, we also were offered to bring some onions from Takata Farms, which is important, and I want to attribute those not only to you as members, but also how important our food is, how important our food safety is in Colorado. We need to know where our food comes from and how it is brought to the table. The essence of our soil health, in turn to plant health, in turn to healthy minds. And with that, I ask you for your full support and an eye on House Bill 1114.
Thank you, Representative Valdez. We'll relax the rule against introducing produce during the Committee of the Whole. Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for bringing this. And I have to ask the co-sponsors, if we don't pass this bill, will you guys be left holding the bags?
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, we won't be left holding the bag, but you might. What this bill will do is it allows the Colorado Department of Agriculture to do the inspections for food safety on farm here in Colorado. We have the best produce in the country, believe me. Other people will say that they're the salad bowl of the United States. Okay, fine. We're the vegetable producers, sweet corn, potatoes, onions, all of those kind of things. This high altitude creates some of the sweetest crops that you've ever eaten, and I know you've eaten some because I've sent some over here of Olathe sweet corn. This is a good thing. It takes the federales off of our farms and puts the Department of Agriculture inspecting your and my neighbors. It gives Colorado an opportunity to inspect the crops that we raise in the produce field. And the other thing about this is the Food and Drug Administration will pay the state of Colorado to do the work. So it's not a net cost. Anyway, I would ask for a yes vote.
Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is food safety not only for the San Luis Valley, but for all of Colorado. And with that, I ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1114? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1114. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 1114 is adopted. System Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report. Oh, wait, do I need to lay over?
Hey, I'm going to disregard the motion for a moment and ask you if you want to make a different one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we lay over the balance of the calendar. Is that the right motion? Okay. Until tomorrow.
Would you like to lay over House Bill 1032 by one day?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1032 by one day.
At the request of the Assistant Majority Leader, House Bill 1032 will be laid over by one day. Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report. Thank you.
The House will come to order. Representative Garnett. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Randall, please read the report.
Madam Speaker, your committee whole big sleeve report has under its consideration the following attached bills, being the segment of the response recommendations thereon. House Bill 1007 is amended, House Bill 1010 is amended, House Bill 1019 is amended, House Bill 1039 is amended, House Bill 1114 is amended, House Bill 1127 is amended, House Bill 1135 is amended. Passed second or gross place counter third reading final passage. Senate Bill 111 is amended, Senate Bill 112, Senate Bill 113 is amended, Senate Bill 114, Senate Bill 115, Senate Bill 116, Senate Bill 117, Senate Bill 118, Senate Bill 119, Senate Bill 120, Senate Bill 121, Senate Bill 122, Senate Bill 123, Senate Bill 124, Senate Bill 125, Senate Bill 126, Senate Bill 127, Senate Bill 128 is amended. Passed second revised. Place count of 30 on final passage. House Bill 1032, House Bill 1037, House Bill 1078, House Bill 1106 laid over until February 15th, 2019, retains place on the calendar. House Bill 1108 laid over unamended, retaining its place on the calendar.
Representative Garnett, Gray. You have heard the motion. There are amendments at the desk. Mr. Randall, please read the Baisley Amendment to House Bill 1039.
Representative Baisley moved to amend the report of the committee to hold reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Baisley Amendment, Amendment L012 to House Bill 1039, show this amendment passed. The House Bill 1039 as amended passed.
Representative Baisley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I respectfully withdraw the amendment.
At the sponsor's request, the amendment is withdrawn. Mr. Randall, please read the Beckman Amendment to House Bill 1039.
Representative Beckman moved to amend the report of the committee to hold reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Beckman Amendment L013 to House Bill 1039 and show that said amendment passed. The House Bill 1039 as amended passed.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move House Bill, it's already been moved, right? Okay. I move to the committee the whole 1039 and ask for an aye vote. Just to
Representative Beckman, what did you move? Did you move the Beckman Amendment? To the
yes,
report
I
of the-
did move the Beckman Amendment.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for your patience. Just to reiterate, my reasoning for this amendment is that these are formal identity documents, historical documents, and identification documents, and the concern for Fraud and identity theft is one that I think our community and state of Colorado is concerned about. And so this would just tighten up the process, and I would ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Lontine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Even if you change the name on your driver's license, the number that you're assigned on your driver's license stays the same. I ask for a no vote.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't quite understand it because it does say legal name, and we want to be very careful to protect everyone. And that's why Representative Buckman is running this amendment, and this is why I support the amendment. I ask for a yes vote.
Representative Escar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As discussed in committee, as discussed on this floor, I will again urge a no vote on this amendment. We have a process in place, and I don't think this is necessary at all.
If there's no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of the Beckman Amendment. Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Representative Baisley. Please close the machine. With 20 aye votes, 42 no votes, 2 excused, and 1 vacant, the Beckman Amendment fails. Mr. Randall, please read the Williams Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Williams moved to amend the report of the committee to hold reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Williams Amendment L004 to House Bill 1007 that show that said amendment passed and that House Bill 1007 as amended passed.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to clarify, this is the Cow Amendment for L004.
This is for, let's see, House Bill 1007, L004, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the Williams Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, the L004 amendment that I ran during the Committee of the Whole talks about allowing candidates to have the ability to fundraise more money if outside groups, whether they be 527s, IECs, et cetera, if they come in and they start spending in these elections. I think it's absolutely appropriate that we bring parity to the situation, especially when that occurs, and that it's very reasonable to ensure that candidates can defend themselves properly and go back to their donor base and ask for more money when these outside groups spend 6 figures in order to influence an election or outright buy an election. So I would ask for a yes vote on this bill, or in this amendment.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask for a no vote on this amendment. The issue was already settled by the voters in the last election. We do believe there are constitutional problems to this amendment, and also it just lets more money into the process.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just to elaborate on the points made by my colleague from Denver, a similar provision here was broadly rejected. We saw it on the ballot as Amendment 75. It was voted down 34 to 66, which is a broad margin reflecting support from voters of any and all affiliation here. I think because voters saw through it, and I think we should see through it too. Appreciate the interest of my colleague from El Paso County in campaign finance reform, and I look forward to bringing some bills to the State Affairs Committee on that point sometime soon. But this is actually letting more money into elections in the name of a bill that proposes to institute some elections. So I think it's paradoxical in that respect. And even if I don't much agree with the particular 2008 Supreme Court case, Davis v. FEC, I think that the mechanism set up here is quite problematic in light of that holding, which is the law of our land, at least for now. And I think that we need to be very wary of voting language onto our statute books that creates the risk of constitutional problems, lest somebody litigate against parts of Title I more broadly. So I do have to ask for a no vote on this cow.
Representative Liston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, members, I rise in support of this amendment, not so much just because whether it's for 5 times the amount, but it's being debated back and forth about we're trying to limit the spending limits, but the unintended consequence of this bill is that the money that was normally given to candidates in county races, now it's going to be limited, and we're going to see a proliferation, I guarantee you, a proliferation of outside spending groups, dark money that we've never seen before, that will have an impact on some of the large counties, but especially for a small county where money is hard to raise, and all of a sudden a special interest group that has access to $100,000 or $200,000 or more, which is not hard to raise by these special groups, is going to like drop in a cannonball in a pail of water. It's going to have an adverse effect, and these candidates, especially in these small counties, are going to literally get blown out of the water by groups that they've never heard about, and they're going to be held defenseless. At least Representative Williams is trying to give candidates in some of these small counties and even in large counties an opportunity to get their message out, to defend themselves. There's going to be tremendous abuses if House Bill 1007 passes. It's going to come back to haunt a lot of good candidates on either side of the aisle. So I would urge an aye vote for the Williams Amendment to the Committee of the Whole, and a no vote if it doesn't pass on 1007. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'll echo the comments of my esteemed colleague from Colorado Springs. This is a question of fairness. If outside groups, dark money, special interests can fundraise 6 figures to influence an election or potentially buy an election, it is absolutely reasonable for county candidates to be able to go back to their donor base and ask for a little bit more money so that they can defend themselves. Many people in this chamber have discussed, this very issue of outside money, dark money, outside groups from, out of the jurisdiction and certainly out of the state coming in and having undue influence over these elections. I don't think it's unreasonable to allow candidates the ability to properly defend themselves. So I would ask that you vote for this amendment so we can send a loud and clear message that the voters, I think, would agree with us is that we don't want dark money, outside special interests coming in and essentially upending our communities. So please vote yes on this amendment.
If there's no further discussion, the question before the House is the adoption of the Williams Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Quinteo, Exum, Mullica, McLaughlin, please vote. Please close the machine. With 31 aye votes, I think that fails. 31 no votes, 2 excused and 1 vacant. The amendment fails. Yep. Mr. Randall, please read the second Representative Williams amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. This is L002.
Representative Williams moved to amend the report of the committee to hold reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Williams Amendment L002 to House Bill 1007 to show that said amendment passed. The House Bill 1007 is amended passed.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the Williams Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this was dealing with L002, and this had to deal with specifically a candidate that is wealthy and able to self-finance. I think we see that many times, not only in state races, but also county races. Even our last gubernatorial race, we saw an individual who was able to self-finance and help support their cause. And I don't think it's a stretch to believe that county candidates do the same thing. I've seen this in my county, where if you're a wealthy individual, you can simply self-finance and essentially buy the election. I think it's absolutely appropriate to allow candidates who are not of that financial ability to be able to go back and talk to their donors and ask them to help them fundraise for their campaign to help create a level playing field. Again, this is about buying an election with potentially a millionaire who can do it. And I think it's absolutely appropriate to allow those who aren't millionaires to come in and the ability to ask for more money so that they have a level playing field. So I'd ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask for a no vote on this amendment. Self-funders will always have a potential advantage that likely won't be overcome by donations even without limits, and the voters already settled this question in the last election.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Sane.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just real quick, I think this is utterly fair. We talk about millionaires and billionaires buying elections more often than not on one side of the aisle, but we also agree with that. We think that a candidate should be given a fair shot at getting somebody who can self-raise money. I urge a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Williams Amendment to the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Hooton. Please close the machine. With 23 aye votes, 39 no votes, 2 excused, and 1 vacant, the Williams Amendment fails. Mr. Randall, please read the Sane Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole on House Bill 1127.
Representative Sane moved to amend the report of the committee hold reverse the action taken by the committee and not adopting the following Sane Amendment L003 to House Bill 1127. Show that said amendment passed. The House Bill 1127 is amended passed.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the Sane Amendment to the Committee of the Whole, and just want to add, they're all sane amendments when I move a Sane Amendment to the Committee of the Whole.
I could respond to that, but I'm not going to. Please proceed.
It's a pleasure serving with you, Madam Speaker.
With you as well, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. But seriously, folks, let me remind you what this amendment is addressing. It's addressing language on page 2 that says, specifically, we're putting this into statute. Acceptance or retention of such an appointment, which we're talking about the lieutenant governor, shall not result in a forfeiture of the office of the lieutenant governor by serving concurrently as a director of Office of Saving Money. It's probably a question I should have asked the bill sponsors earlier, but why would we put that in writing? Secondly, this amendment also addresses it shall be deemed that holding the office of lieutenant governor while concurrently serving as a director of the Office of Saving People Money on Health Care is not incompatible, inconsistent, or in conflict with the duties of lieutenant governor. Why would we put that into statute? Unless there might be something wrong, may give the perception. And fiduciary duty, it's very clear when we look at some of our own ethics that you should not give the perception. And we're directly countering that in this bill. I don't want to endanger my colleagues on either side of the aisle on this bill. I would please ask you to vote yes.
Representative Lentine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I urge a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before the House is the adoption of the same amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Representative Coleman and Wilson, please close the machine. With 22 aye votes, 40 no votes, 2 excused, and 1 vacant, the same amendment fails. Mr. Randall, please read the second sane amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. L002.
Representative Sane moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee not adopting the following Sane Amendment L002 to House Bill 1127. The show that said amendment passed. The House Bill 1127 as amended passed.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the rebranding. I move the same amendment to the Committee of the Whole. The second.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, back to, we really should reserve safety clause for very few instances. So I would ask for a yes vote on this amendment as well.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would urge a no vote.
If there's no further discussion, the question before the House is the same amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Representative McCluskey. Please close the machine. With 22 aye votes, 40 no votes, 2 excused, and 1 vacant, the sane amendment fails. There are no further amendments at the desk. The question before us is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Representative Buenteo Snyder Weissman. Please close the machine. With 43 aye votes, 19 no votes, 2 excused, and 1 vacant, the report of the Committee of the Whole is passed. Announcements and introductions. Representative Galindo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam Speaker. Sorry. Are you going to find me?
You'll get a pass.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I asked, after speaking with leadership, I asked to be excused tomorrow, Friday, February 15th.
Representative will be excused for the time requested. Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, there's some onions over here from Sakata Farms. If you would like to come and get some, you're more than welcome to. Thank you.
Fantastic. Representative Buckner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. All of the ladies, or I think everyone in this room, received a rose on their desk. If you did, shake your head. Well, those roses are courtesy of Senator Brittany Pedersen. Yes, she said to tell all of you that she misses you, and that's why she put the roses on your desk.
Were her initials on the rose? Because I think... Just kidding. Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Okay, one amendment to Education Committee. We are going to be hearing 1139 first and 1017 second. Thank you very much.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I forgot to remind members last week that tomorrow will be Bow Tie Friday, but I see some bow ties already, and lots of bow ties were worn last Friday. So wear your bow tie, wear your bolo, bring your baby, wear your scarf, wear your ascot, or a turtleneck, which I did and would never do again. Thank you.
Representative Lontine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tomorrow is a dental day at the Capitol, and there will be a breakfast served in the basement rotunda, and they'll be looking forward to talking to you tomorrow. Thanks.
Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 1 year ago today...
Members, please be quiet.
1 year ago today, 17 students and staff and dozens more were murdered, dozens more were injured at the mass shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. I ask for a moment of silence.
Moment of silence is granted.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Sullivan. Any other announcements and introductions? Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow, Friday, February 15th. Wait. Oh, no, I'll do that later.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over till tomorrow, Friday, February 15th. Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will be in recess till later today.